There are a ton of classic games out there that just don't hold up. And we just started a new console generation, so the difference is going to be more stark. Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on gameranx, the top 10 games that desperately need a PlayStation 5 remake. Starting off at number 10 is The Lord of the Rings: The Return of the King. Now, I don't know if you remember this game, but it was a hack and slash back in 2003. It might predate your gaming career, I'm not 100% sure on that. In fact, a lot of these games may very well. But Lord of the Rings was absolutely huge at the time, and more than that, I mean, this was just a really well-made game. I played it on the PS2, and I remember this just being one of the best looking games out there. But more than that, one of the best sounding games. Like, the audio design for this game was amazing. And on top of that, it was this hack and slash that did more than just be like a mindless game. It also interwove multiple plots, just like the real stories do. And Ian McKellen was even the narrator for the game, and that just added this tone to it that was, well, this was back at a time when voice acting in games really wasn't commonplace. Or at least commonplace in the way it is now, where like you see full games where every character, including every minor NPC, has voices. We were still adjusting to voice acting at this point, and wow, it just did so much for the tone. I mean, this is a beautiful, cool game that if it were brought into today's graphical prowess would be, I don't know, I just remember this being one of the best hack and slash games out there. I'd kind of forgotten about this game until we started talking about this list, but as I've been looking into it, I've been like, wow, yeah, that really was one of the best hack and slash games. I need a way to play that now. Number 9 is Knights of the Old Republic, perhaps one of the coolest RPGs of all time. Kind of an early BioWare title, we learned a lot about what they were about on a larger stage on account it was a Star Wars game, and perhaps one of the most detailed Star Wars games. It was, however, a lot different from Mass Effect in that it was a turn-based RPG rather than an action RPG. However, as you play it, you can just see so much of Mass Effect in this game. That being said, it's also one of the best Star Wars stories ever told. The Old Republic that we were introduced to and eventually continued our story in Knights of the Old Republic 2, which also deserves a remake, might I add, is just perhaps one of the most interesting eras of Star Wars ever. I remember getting the original Xbox and this game and thinking, wow, this is something I've wanted for so many years. Like the entire 1990s, I always thought, wow, wouldn't it be cool if you could just do like a Star Wars RPG, like Chrono Trigger? And it was that, except for it was different in style, of course. That being said, just an incredible game. Now, we know this one didn't originally hit PS2 or anything, but a remake could go multi-platform, and that would really make a difference. At number 8 is The Legend of Dragoon, which is a game that, like, it kind of defies explanation in certain ways. Like, it's a game that looks and plays a lot like Final Fantasy VII, but at the same time, it built several of its own very, very different thoughts and ideas to the conventions of the JRPG genre, including a combo system, and got at times criticized for being generic. However, it's a game that, looking back, is just really, really different, actually. It also had a really large budget and took forever to recuperate it, so that may be part of the reason why it's not necessarily looked at as a vital title by some of the powers that be. However, Sony, in my opinion, is kind of sitting on a big pile of gold that, honestly, like, with even a decent remake, might even make it into a popular franchise if they wanted to maybe think about sequels. I mean, Legend of Dragoon was some good stuff. At number 7 is Silent Hill 1. Yes, the first of the Silent Hill games. Really just an honest-to-God classic. Something that's totally different, just completely out of the blue. A lot of people compared it to Resident Evil at the time, but it's such a different game in my opinion, dealing with such different themes of guilt, loss, and dealing it in a way that's truly, honestly, like, scary. It was also kind of a confusing game, very mysterious when it first came out. However, that was definitely a selling point as opposed to something that was detrimental to it. It had a totally unique aesthetic, incredible sound, incredible visuals, the fog. I mean, it's seriously an iconic game. I could see it getting kind of a Resident Evil style treatment given its context and sort of legendary status as a series that has had similar ups and downs. But honestly, like, can you imagine how great that would be to play through the original Silent Hill story again, especially after we were teased with Silent Hills with Norman Reedus from Hideo Kojima. But alas, Konami, sitting on gold, same with Symphony of the Night. And number 6 is Grand Theft Auto Vice City. Now, Vice City is a beautiful game. Looking back, like, it's such a visually varied and interesting title, and there are people that are working to update it in the mod community. We've actually talked about it on this channel before. However, I would love to see an official GTA Vice City remake. Vice City's architecture was just beautiful. The colors were just insane. It was just something above and beyond all the other games in its own very weird way. And to see it with updated lighting, to see it with updated character models, car models, etc., I think it would be a sight to behold. Now, that being said, I'm not 100% sure that's something that's interesting to Rockstar or to contract out for Rockstar. I have no idea. I would accept a sequel to it, in all honesty. GTA Vice City 2 would be something I wouldn't be upset about. However, I will say I would really like to take a trip down memory lane with Tommy Vercetti. And at number 5, it's Dino Crisis 1 and 2. Yes, these are kind of different games, actually. And I'm probably more interested in number 1 than number 2. However, Dino Crisis was a really unique take on Resident Evil, basically. Hey, you know Jurassic Park? What if a Resident Evil game was that instead of zombies? Yeah, I'll take it. Like, let's be 100% clear, too. Capcom could do this. We've brought up Dino Crisis enough on this channel over the last year, especially in the context of the Resident Evil remakes, that I think it's at least obviously on the minds of people who are passionate about Capcom games, meaning us. I mean, the 3D nature of Dino Crisis was really cool, too. It was just above and beyond Resident Evil, and although the second one was definitely different, it was also a really good game. Maybe it might be cool if they took the content of both games and unified the style of gameplay so that it was more like the first. I mean, that would be my ideal Dino Crisis remake project. Capcom, you listening? Are you listening? And at number 4 is Max Payne. Like, how could you possibly not want a full-blown remake of the original Max Payne? Really, honestly, probably my favorite story out of the Max Payne games. However, a very primitive game compared to Max Payne 3. In fact, really all I would want is for them to remake the game with everything they've done to the series up to Max Payne 3. Max Payne 3 friggin' rules, although I like the story in the first one the best. It's the most interesting to me, and although in some ways it's even kind of limited compared to the Max Payne 3 story, it's also a little more personal, and the revenge tale as well as the conspiracy that unravels during the course of it, I would really love to play it in the context of, say, the engine of Max Payne 3, or a lot of the improvements applied to a new engine. I think that it's a lot like Mafia as far as what would be great for a remake, and I think that the remake would probably turn out to be similar. And number 3 is Freedom Fighters, a game that came out back in 2003 on GameCube, PlayStation 2, the original Xbox, and PC. It came to us by the original creators of Hitman 2 and takes place in an alternate history where the USSR conquered New York City. Now, it's a really interesting scenario, and a lot of the mechanics are good, but not necessarily, well, it's a third-person shooter game from 2003. Just to completely contextualize, it needs to be updated. Third-person shooters are like completely different now, and modern controls would really benefit what is ultimately an incredibly good concept for a game that was executed really well, even given its somewhat limited era. In truth, it's not the worst looking game. Like, it kind of has retro graphics that could be passed off as retro, but I'd just really like to see the full thing remade personally. At number 2 is Castlevania Symphony of the Night. Yes, there has been a remaster of this, but we're talking a remake. And this is not necessarily to say that a remake would be better, but I would be extremely interested to see the choices that might be made if the game itself were entirely remade. from the ground up new assets, new everything, possibly even using 3D assets, possibly even modifying the gameplay in some way. It would be very interesting, in my opinion, to see just how much could be changed while fundamentally still calling it the same thing. Now, I do have to say, just to keep this in mind, I'm gonna probably always consider the original to be the superior game, and Castlevania Requiem gave us a really good version of it. So in some ways, this is more of a, I like progress, I like to see where we are in gaming type hope, but obviously, it's a classic game. I think it's desperately in need of a remake just because I think it would be extremely interesting. And finally, at number 1, The Godfather, the game. Originally released in 2006 to the PlayStation Portable, the Wii, Xbox 360, the original Xbox, PlayStation 2, and PC, The Godfather, the game is, a game that was pretty satisfying when it first came out on PlayStation 2, Xbox, and PC, but really just doesn't hold up. It's not just like a Grand Theft Auto clone or anything. It's a game that went above and beyond the Call of Duty. However, it's just so limited. This is a story that worked really well as a game, actually, and I enjoyed the hell out of it at the time, but I just don't believe I could go back and play it now. It's so basic and rudimentary in terms of what you would expect from a game now. Full remake, on the other hand, take all of the narrative decisions that were made, all of the pacing conventions that were established. It's really, in those respects, a great game. And the story, of course, is The Godfather. It's a great story. But, it's 2020, and you look back at this PlayStation 2 game, and it's kind of like, well, yeah, I could stand for this to look better. But what do you think? Have you played any of these games recently and thought, wow, it'd be nice to see what this would look like with current tech? Leave us a comment, let us know what you think. If you like this video, click like. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week. The best way to see them first is, of course, a subscription. So click subscribe. Don't forget to click the notification bell. And as always, we thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter at Falcon the Hero. And we'll see you next time right here on gameranx.